Hey everybody! Welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name's Amanda and I'm glad you could join me today. Today's episode is going to be a tough one, quite honestly. Today's episode is extremely personal, and it's one that every person who is in the process of converting or is even questioning has to deal with at some point. And I'm going to be very real and honest regarding my experiences. Today's episode is all about telling your family and supportive people around you about your struggles and about your choices. Now, I'm going to begin by giving you a caveat. Don't do this step until you are ready, confident, and sure of what you want. Because the people who are around you and love and support you, you would hope love and support you regardless of what choices you choose to make as far as what you believe or what you practice. But if you're not ready and you're looking for validation or confirmation in someone else, you might not receive that from people. You might receive responses that you weren't expecting or could be viewed as hurtful to you. And if you're not confident in who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it, it can sting. It can sting. So be prepared for that. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but I want you to be prepared for that. Okay? So when I finally made the decision to officially start the conversion process, I started slowly telling people. When I told my immediate family that I was taking a Judaism 101 course and I was meeting with a rabbi, my family was shocked, quite honestly. And that's my fault. I did not let them know that I was struggling from an early age. I kept a lot of things from them because I felt like it was something wrong with me and I didn't want to make them feel like they did something wrong. So I kept a lot of that to myself. And because I kept a lot of that to myself, they were a little bit blindsided when I came to them and said, Christianity is just not for me. I'm feeling pulled towards Judaism. I'm going to start this conversion course and da 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 da. It was mind shattering to them. It was a lot. It was a lot. I can remember my mom's face just being stunned. I can remember my sisters relaying information that my parents were saying that it was just a phase I was going through. I can remember feedback from people relaying back to me. Nobody said anything directly to me besides that shocked look on their face, saying that, oh, it's just a phase I'm going through and I'm just converting because of my boyfriend and she'll come out of it. It'll be fine. And that hurt. But I brought that on myself because I didn't tell them. So my first suggestion, when you're telling them, after you're confident and you're ready, is to clue them in early. Clue them in early. Now, after my sisters had sat with it for a little while, they were much more open and accepting about it. I have two sisters, and one is a practicing Christian, and one sees God, and it feels like they have a strong faith, but they don't belong to any denomination. Both of them have accepted my conversion. They're very supportive. They ask questions. They're supportive of me. So basically, whatever I feel is best for me, they're supportive of. And I love and I appreciate them for that. And I love that they want to know more. I'm not trying to convert everyone in my family or my friends or anything like that to Judaism, but sharing your story and being vulnerable and saying, what I thought isn't what I believe, it doesn't match with my understandings anymore, is tough. It's a very vulnerable place to be. So it's nice when you get some people who, while they don't understand everything, they accept you, and they don't push back on it. They don't judge you for it. That was my sisters. They have been amazing. They are very supportive, encouraging. They ask questions frequently. They want to know where I am in the process. But more importantly, they want to know how they can be supportive of me and my boyfriend whenever we get together for family functions, for example. They want to make sure that everything is okay and that we're not doing anything that may unintentionally be offensive. So very much appreciate that. My parents have taken a lot longer. Truthfully speaking, sometimes I wonder if my parents are fully on board now. When I first told them, my parents were shocked. I had a dinner with both my mom and my dad after I had told them initially, and they seemed disheartened and disappointed in my choice. And that hurt, because you want to make your parents proud, but that hurt because I was viewing their actions as they weren't concerned about me. They were concerned about, well, how did this make them look? And I didn't appreciate that. It seemed like they weren't necessarily concerned with me or my experience. They were more focused on them. And I had to let that be their problem. And that was really tough. I can remember having conversations, and we have multiple conversations. It's not a one and done thing, and it's still not a one and done thing. I have conversations where I have actually been told, I just don't want you to convert. Can't you just keep it in the closet? And that's hurtful on such a deep level. I'm not asking them to be Jewish. I'm just asking them to support and love me. I'm not asking you to change anything, but for them to kind of focus on, well, can't you just stifle yourself to not make us look bad? The most hurtful thing that was received directly from one of my parents was, well, do you have any idea how this makes me look? Did you even think about me in this process? That stung more than anything. That, quite honestly, that made me cry. Because that was the moment when I realized that they weren't thinking of me. They were thinking of them and their experiences. And it hurt, because the people that I had emulated for so long, they were more focused on them and the appearance that it would give, that I had struggles, that I was choosing something different. That's all they were focused on. And that hurt. That cut deeply. That cut extremely deep. To the point where I still struggle with it sometimes, to be perfectly honest. They're getting better. They're understanding more. They're asking more questions, but there's still a wall up about some things. And part of that is they're trying to figure out how to make everything work together. And part of it is they have to let go of control, essentially. They cannot control or dictate who I am, where I live, how I live. And I haven't I haven't pushed that very much. I may be over 40, but I still did a lot of things just to please my parents. And that was tough. I was having a conversation with one of them about why they were struggling with that concept so much. And they shared that because growing up, I was so active and I taught Sunday school and confirmation, and we had a connection regarding that because they also helped in that same perspective. They were concerned that there would be a bond or a tether that was all of a sudden cut and they wouldn't have that connection anymore. And so I just had to relate to them. Like, I can still talk to you about these different things. I can still share your joys when you're doing different celebrations and things like that. There are different things that when I am fully converted that I have chosen not to do, and they don't like that. They struggle with the idea that I'm choosing not to go into a house of worship that is not for Judaism after I'm converted. I'm still torn on whether I will or will not make an exception for a funeral or a wedding. That I'm still working through. But I'm not going to go to random services with them because they're praying most of the time to Jesus. There's all the symbolism for Jesus, and that's just not something that's okay for me. That's not something that's okay for me, so that's something that I choose not to do. And they don't care for that because it's a change for them. They don't care for the idea that I have chosen that once I am finished with conversion, I'm not going to be present for Christmas or Easter. Again, those are holidays that celebrate Jesus, and I don't believe in Jesus as a savior by any means. So why would I be there? That's something I chose to do, but they are viewing it basically as an attack on the family, and that I'm changing things and I'm just being selfish, and that's hard because that's something they're struggling with, and I can't change that for them. I can suggest different ideas. I can suggest different ways to have family get-togethers. I want our family still to be close, but there are certain things that I'm not comfortable doing because it does not mesh with what I believe. And my family is still working on that. They're still working on it. But I think that's what surprised me, quite honestly. I really thought going into the conversion process that my family would love me no matter what. And I really thought that they would be supportive no matter what. And it hurt when they didn't. It hurt when they pushed back, and when they said it was just a phase, or I was doing this just for my boyfriend, or I wasn't being serious about it. It hurt. It hurt. This is not something I went into lightly, but it hurt. And I don't know that they fully understand it, but I feel that with time, they're understanding a little bit more. And I think it's normal at the same time for parents to struggle with that a little bit more than others because they feel a certain level of responsibility for you and your soul or your spiritual guidance or whatever. That was tough. Now, on the flip side, when I started telling coworkers or friends, they were very supportive. Very supportive. I was out to lunch with two friends, and I told them that I was in this process of converting, and they were very confused because they didn't hear anything about that. Again, I live in a small town in Wisconsin. We are not very racially diverse, let alone religiously diverse. It's typically all Christian in my area. So that I was doing something different was surprising just because I didn't know anything about it. But their big joke was, okay, do we think we can still be friends with her if she doesn't eat bacon? Yes, we'll just eat the bacon for her. That was their big joke, and then it was fine. I've had friends who have asked questions. A lot of times when I would tell my friends, they would want to know more right away. They would want to know more about my story of why I was choosing to convert. They wanted to understand. There was much less judgment, and I appreciate that. There were people I told very early on. There were people I told closer to the end of my conversion. And they all had different responses, but they were all positive. Now, my coworkers in particular, shout out to them because they have been phenomenal. There is one teacher that I actually teach on the same grade level with. She has been over the moon excited. She doesn't really have people in her life that are Jewish, so she doesn't know very much about it, but she's been very inquisitive and very supportive, and she makes it a point every Friday to tell me to hurry home so I can have a good Shabbat. And I think it's adorable, and I appreciate her support. She asks questions very genuinely, and she will also advocate on my behalf as far as if things are happening around and people are not as aware of the diversity that's in the area. I'm absolutely more than comfortable at this point of advocating for myself, but I love the fact that she will stand up and say something instead of just letting it all roll by. So my friends typically responded very well. Now, my first big test, if you want to call it that, my first big moment where I had a little bit of anxiety about telling people was when I finally made a post on Facebook about it. Because on Facebook, you have people that are there, that, from all walks of life, all parts of your life, and people that you might not talk to on a regular basis. But I felt like I could not be my true self and not tell everybody. I don't want it to be a surprise. I didn't want to hide it. I am proud of the fact that I am going through the conversion process. I am overjoyed to claim the title of being a Jewish woman, even though I can't technically claim it yet. But I live my life currently as a Jewish woman. I just have not finished the conversion process. So to tell the people on Facebook, I was a bit anxious or a bit nervous because I didn't know. I didn't know if I would have a whole bunch of people on my friends list that would go away. I didn't know if I would have people say things. I didn't know if I would get support. I didn't know. I didn't know. And that unknowing caused me anxiety. Now, I can tell you, I made the post with a little bit of prompting, yes, of course, from my boyfriend. He said, you're operating, you're living, just do it. Take the step. Do it. So he was with me when I made the post. I made the post. He refused to proofread it or check it or does this sound okay? Again, he wants me to own the process. So I made the post and he was with me and distracted me for a little while so that I wasn't constantly looking at Facebook for that validation to see if people were going to say something, not say something. And for the most part, I received really positive feedback. I received comments like, you need to do what's right for you. I'm proud of you for owning your journey. I love you regardless. I had people say, I pray for you on your journey, or I pray for you. So those last two were probably the closest to negative that I received comment-wise. And they're not negative comments, but you could, depending on how you use the intonations, you could perceive it as negative if you were looking for that. I don't think that was the intention, and that's not generally how I took it. But I was happy and relieved to see that there was support from Facebook. And again, not everyone liked, loved, or cared about my post. Not everybody commented, nor did I expect them to. But it was nice to know that I had some support, especially because I had already had the conversations with my family and my closest set of friends that I got that feedback from. So I felt confident and ready to take the next step and post it on Facebook. Now, the next step was I started telling people in person, people that weren't on Facebook necessarily, kind of just owning my identity. And so when you run into somebody and they say, well, what's going on and how are you been? Like, I have a lot of stuff going on in my life, and it's typically good stuff. And so I will throw in there that I'm on the conversion process and I'm excited about it. Like, it's just part of my narrative. And I have people who have asked questions. I've had, gratefully, a couple of aunts and uncles that want to know more about my process. And they have even watched some of my YouTube videos and said, I had some of the same questions, or I had some of the same experiences growing up. Like, can we chat about some things? Absolutely. That's been wonderful. I have not had people be direct and negative to me. I have people who haven't said anything. I have had aunts and uncles and friends that just haven't liked or commented on any of my posts. Now, whether that means they just haven't seen them or they don't support my choices, that's not my decision. That's not something I can control. But I would love to have the conversations. When you choose to convert, it's a big change. It's a lifestyle change. And everyone wants to have supportive people around them. But I also knew at the core that not everyone is going to be supportive. Not everyone is going to be happy for you when you do something that's good for you. Sometimes people want you just to stay where you were because that's what makes them feel better. But you're not being your authentic self if you do everything for everyone else. Now, I have struggled growing up being a people pleaser and a bit of a doormat, and balancing that out now with having the confidence to own who I am, what my worth is, and stand up and require that. Balancing that desire with my people pleasing and not wanting to come off as abrasive or selfish or unkind, that's something I personally still am struggling with. By no means I'm trying to push my choices on other people. I just want to share my story. And whether they choose to continue practicing the way they are, whether they choose to change, whether they question thoughts, whether they support me or not, that's on them. But I have to be myself. And that's a wonderful feeling, but a scary feeling. Because if you're a people pleaser, you want people to like you. You want people to support you. But a wise man, my boyfriend, told me this story of a rocket, and I hold on to it. So much so that it annoys him because I'll quote it back to him. So I'm going to share it with you. So he said, your life is like a rocket. On a rocket, you have rocket boosters. And once you launch, those rocket boosters will fall off because you can't get to where you're going if you have them still on. He said the rocket boosters are just like people in your life. People serve a purpose in your life. Not everyone will be with you from start to finish because they're not going where you're going. Their path is going to lead different ways. They're not bad people. They just are on a different path than you are. But if you try to hold on to everybody and people please everybody to stay, you're also not going to get to where you're supposed to be, where you want to be, where God designed you to be. So you have to be okay with the letting go. And that's tough. But I can also tell you on the flip side that it's quite freeing to own who you are and be you. Be your broken self. Be your flawed self. Be your questioning self. The people who love and care for you will love and care for you. Now you can help them by cluing them in early that you have these questions. You have to be true to you. And you just need to be confident in why you're doing what you're doing. And let them know that you're not doing this because they did something wrong. You're doing this because of something you learned, some knowledge you have, some feelings you experience, some whatever. Share your story with them. But make sure that you own your story and don't let other people dictate it for you. It's tough. It's tough, but it's also very freeing. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. Telling your story is great. Now, after I told my story, there was still more learning to do. I still needed to work on what my Hebrew name was going to be. Still worked on what are all these different things in Judaism. There's still more learning to do. Will my family still have questions? Yes. Does my employer still have questions? Yes. There are questions and advocacy that you need to do with your employer that I didn't think of before becoming Jewish, because Christianity is just so widely accepted. It's the norm. So when you're not following the normed path, it causes a bit of rub. And you need to inform people, not belittle them, just inform them. So there you go. That's my story of when and how I told others, tears and all, joys and struggles. It's my story, and I'm proud of it. So tune in next time, and we'll discover more things that I'm struggling with and more things that we're learning about. Okay? Until then, take care.